Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in this wonderful world. My name is Scott, and joining me today has been our want for the last several weeks is Trina and Sarah from Nairobi. And where do you hail from, Trina?
I hailed originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but I'm here in Montclair right now. And of course, we're across the world with Sarah in Kenya. Sarah and I have become great friends. We're both part of the Grail movement. And I want to frame it a bit. This is Pentecost week. This is a Monday, and we've had the big Sunday Pentecost celebration. And that's my framing of my life, is the liturgical week that circles in this climate of the northern countries. So similar. It's so united with the natural world. It's cold in the winter and Advent and darkness and waiting in its church year, the liturgical year. And now it's the growth time. And so we're headed into the period of big growth with the Holy Spirit blowing on us and making us fruitful. And with that, I want to introduce Sarah, because Sarah's unique for me. At least I personally can contact and be part of what's happening in Africa, which is a real privilege. Sarah is both a person who can be adept in a television studio that looks like a CBS studio or any of those big ones, and talking about climate change and things. But also we have her on her mother's compound at her farm. So this is a conversation between us on the subject of amaranth, a very important herb for the world and particularly Africa.
I know that Trina has a bunch of questions for you, Sarah, about amaranth, which is above my pay grade. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion. But I have an introductory question for you. You'll be talking about your farm, or the farm that your mother works at and that you recently visited. Did you grow up there? Is it yours now? What do you hope to do with it? What's the big context of this place where you grow so many things? And what do you grow on the farm? And then we'll get into the topic of the day.
Okay. Thank you, Scott, for that question. So one, I've partly grown up there because this is a land that we bought. But in Kenya, we have ancestral lands. Apparently, we were not able to keep our ancestral land after my dad died. So this is a land that we bought. We've been there for less than 15 years. I've partly grown up there and partly I grew up in my ancestral land. So my mom lives here in this land, and this is where she practices all her farming. Whatever she grows is just for food. And we have varieties of crops that are in this land. We have bananas, we have cassava, we have millet, we have sweet potatoes. We have varieties of vegetables again. We have the spider herb. We have some herb vegetables. We have some spinach. We also have some Irish potatoes. And we have some fruits. We have passion fruit and we have the tomato fruit as well. So it's just a small piece of land, but it produces enough food for us. So we don't buy most of the food. We get most of the food from our small farm. It's a small piece of land, but it has actually helped us. So in future, maybe if I get a bigger land, I would continue practicing what my mom is doing, but now maybe for the purpose of educating others and maybe making a better living out of it. Yeah. I don't know if I've answered your question.
What is amaranth? What is it in the first place? And how does it grow?
Amaranth is a type of vegetable that is very native and it's grown in so many households in Kenya. It's one of the most expensive vegetables when it gets to the market and one of the most nutritious vegetables because of its nutritional value and the varieties of amaranth that produces different types of nutritional value, including the iron, vitamin, and it also works as an appetizer, especially to people who are sick. It's one of the vegetables that is valued so much.
Do you give it to people who are sick particularly? What does it do? You say it gives them iron and many nutrients. And are there different kinds of amaranths?
Yeah, I know them with their colors because we have the cream one, we have the purple, we have a mixture of purple and green, and we have dark green leafy amaranth, we have a light leafy amaranth, and they are not only given to patients, but they are also recommended to patients because they have a taste that is very unique and they are believed to be appetizers as well. especially to those people who are sick. But the leaves can be eaten by anyone as a vegetable.
I know your mother saved seeds. Do you want to tell us something about that? Because that's one of the things I think this whole series that we're doing together is trying to show is the importance to save your seeds. And so you keep your own indigenous seeds. If you have at least 3 kinds of amaranth with different qualities that are suited for your soil, it's wonderful if you've saved your seeds. So
Yeah.
tell how your mother does that, how she manages to do that.
Maybe one thing you need to know is that my mom has kept the amaranth seeds for the last 30 years and she still uses the same seeds, but she makes sure that every time she plants them, at least she saves them. So what she does, she makes sure that after broadcasting the amaranth, because it has very tiny seeds, so the only way you can do plant is by broadcasting it. So you broadcast it, of course, it's more of it gathering together. So you can prepare them and then you leave some of them to grow, to overgrow, to mature and become now the seeds out of that. So what my mother does is that after these ones that are left in the garden have overgrown, she uproots them and now takes the seeds that are mature out of these grown amaranth that were left. So they take 3 weeks to mature for eating and then about 6 weeks to mature to start now producing the seed. And these seeds, whatever my mother does with the seeds is that after she's now taken the seeds out of the mature ones, she puts them in a gourd and puts it in a kitchen. And it's believed that smoke is a preservative. It does not allow any weevils to come and now destroy the seed.
That's good. That was another one of my questions. How you keep the bugs out of a thing like this and save it for 30 years. That's really so important. And that your mother is a hero for me. You've told her that, I know, that she's become a hero, that she's an example for me of the indigenous wisdom that we hope to be sharing with the world, because it's so easy to think that the most important wisdom is coming from the West and from America. And people, that are likely to get rid of their old seeds and buy genetically engineered seeds, which don't grow or you can't keep, and then use fertilizer, which they can't afford, and produce vegetables that don't handle up well in the dry seasons. So tell us about that, because you use composting that has manure in it, and your mother is very good at that. So tell us a little bit about how she handles that whole thing, how she fertilizes her garden and keeps it growing all the time.
One thing we need to understand about amaranth is that amaranth itself has a very natural fertilizer. When these leaves dry, they can be mixed with some compost in the hole, the waste of the animals like the cows and the chicken, and make very good fertilizer out of it, or rather a manure. We call it compost manure, or we call it farmyard manure, because we mix the waste of the animals, the leaves, and the remains of the seeds. Amaranth itself is a manure, a very natural manure. When you plant amaranth somewhere, actually you can always see when you uproot this amaranth, you see that the soil left behind is very fertile, and you can just plant another vegetable there without adding any manure. So what my mom does, she uses the farmyard manure and compost manure, and she prepares this manure by herself. So she uses the animal waste. We have 2 cows, we have chicken. So that one gives us part of the manure. We have the leaves. And we also have part of the amaranth that is not used mixed into this manure. And then we leave it for about 6 months. And then we use it now for planting. Amaranth does not need a lot of manure. It needs very little of it. Because when you look at the seeds, they are very tiny. And now that amaranth itself has its natural manure in the seed, we just need very little manure to grow the amaranth. That is what my mom does. And she only applies this manure maybe once in a year. And then in the next 2 years, she doesn't need to apply another manure, especially in that part where she grows the amaranth. Because once you've applied the first manure, this manure remains in the soil for about 2 to 3 years. So you don't need to add more.
I think that one of the things that's different, I think when you use the word manure, you do mean a kind of compost, because you mix the cow dung and the chicken stuff with the leaves and with other things from your garden. Now, in our country, I think when we use the word manure, we think of it as just the droppings from the animals and not compost. If you mix it together, we would call it compost. So those of you watching, know that she doesn't mean just the animal waste. She means the bigger picture. At least I think that's true. And I think that's what you mean to say, don't you? But you used to say manure for the bigger picture, and we're isolating it into just animal waste. You're sometimes with your mother where you took these pictures, and then there's sometimes that you're in Nairobi, the big city, and that's about 9 hours away, I understand. So you don't get to your mom's very often. So how do you eat when you're in the city, and how does Amaranth fit into your life there?
So one thing I make sure is that I come with my food from the village because I don't trust the food in the city because I don't know where they are grown. And now that my mom grows this food and I also participate in the growing of the food, I always carry this food and bring it to my place. I go home after every 3 to 4 months. So when I come with this food, I make sure that it sustains me for 2 to 3 months so that by the time it's over, when I go back home, I come with another cup of food. So amaranth is one of the vegetables that I carry from home. We dry the leaves just using the natural sap. And then I carry the dried leaves of amaranth to Nairobi. When I come to Nairobi, the only way I can now prepare it, I boil hot water because amaranth doesn't take much time to cook. I just boil hot water and then I put some salt in the hot water. Then I put the dried amaranth leaves in the water. When I bring it out of the water, I'm putting salt so that it preserves the nutrients that are in the leaves. So when I bring them out of the water, they are ready for eating. And another way is refrigerating them. So I come with the raw leaves and then I steam them. And then I refrigerate them. And then I'll just be taking a bit of it and using it for my food. So that is how I preserve it, more nutritious, and I know how it has been prepared.
I'm so glad that you're appreciating the wisdom of your mother, who's one of my heroes, who has kept this indigenous wisdom alive. Because you've also told me some really horrible stories about people who have totally abandoned their ways and their seeds and have been buying artificial fertilizer. And at first glance in the first season, it looks like it's a great, wonderful crop, but it doesn't last and they don't have their seeds anymore. And so your mother is going to be one of the banks for the future, for sustainability in Kenya, I'm sure, whether she knows it or not right now. And she has a daughter who appreciates it. Isn't that wonderful? Aren't we lucky? So thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Trina. Indeed, I take this as a privilege, maybe to share the knowledge that I'm learning from my mother. That is not my knowledge, but it's knowledge from my mother, and I think it's the greatest wealth that I'm inheriting. I'm so glad that at least there are people out there who are listening to this, and maybe they are going to buy some of this knowledge and put it into practice. My hope is that in future the world becomes better as we try these practices, teach them to the people who are around us and all over the world. Thank you very much for this platform.
And I love the way that you used the word buy, because this doesn't cost us anything. It just means that we open ourselves up to the wisdom of the world that we may have lost and that we don't want to lose completely. So thank you, Sarah, for helping us do this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Trina and Scott.